thank you for having us. One of the questions I had, especially after going through the tour, was education. The way I grew up, education was very important for us, and we've walked through, we've learned that a lot of the times, education was diminished for a lot of young kids, especially black kids, to improve and learn. So for me, now it's what can we be doing in schools, especially elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools to kind of get people caught up, and what do we need to be doing to be more impactful in the community?
Right. Yeah, well, again, I'm super glad that you and the team were able to visit the Institute. And that's a good question. Education is really the foundation of any type of advancement, right? And when we look at this experience, when we look at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, I think the first step is an example, right? Who is the example in your household to show you why you need to be educated, right? To show you why education is important, especially around the movement, right? The civil rights movement, what's going on. If you're in a black and brown household, there's really the need, especially in today's time frame, to have a trusted source, right? Because with the internet, there's so much misinformation out there. It's just like, okay, where is a safe place in which I can be educated so I can know what happened historically, so I can know some of the issues around policy, so I can know who were civil rights heroes and sheroes that could be an example for me to step into that type of space. It could be around economic development, right? It could be around business and entrepreneurship. But we see the biggest impact is when you're able to see someone that may not look like you, right? Trust someone that may not look like you, and have the ability to learn about a topic or a subject, even though it's uncomfortable, but you know that you trust each other. You know that you respect each other. So when you uncover those uncomfortable moments on areas that you may disagree, areas in which you want more information on, you still respect that individual. So we always say it starts at home, right? It starts with the individual. As you start to expose yourself to more information, expose yourself to different resources, partner with the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, you'll then become empowered, right, to take the proper steps, not only as a parent, but also for you to be an example for your child. So education is extremely important when it pertains to a skill set, but also when it pertains to knowing our history so we know how to exemplify ourselves moving forward.
As you mentioned, it begins in the household. I know in a lot of neighborhoods, at least that I've been in and seen, I think when the parents, or especially the parents or older siblings, haven't gone to school or haven't been educated, so how do you go about being that they don't have really an example, and then they're surrounded by misinformation and also people in their similar situations, and they're not able to kind of progress. So how do you go about educating them and giving them the courage to be like, hey, that's not the norm. Like, you can beat that and move forward and be successful just because your parents aren't doing it. So how do we go about putting that into their hearts to kind of move forward from what they've seen as a norm in their lives?
Right. I think when someone is in an environment that doesn't allow them to have access to the education, they don't have the examples to look at. I truly believe partnerships like this, if they are interested in football or soccer, if they are interested into a different sport, who are those influencers that can point them in a direction on why education is important? Because unfortunately, there are so many different environments that don't allow them to have access to someone like yourself or even to the right information. But who are those individuals that can influence some of their thinking to at least create the appetite to want to learn something different, to want to change their situation? So we believe, as you mentioned, just with really the history of Birmingham, because Birmingham is really a hero city, right? It's a city where heroes not only were birthed, but they were also able to exemplify what civil and human rights looks like in person, right? And so the next phase of that, even the journey of Dr. King, was really the liberation around economics and finances, right? The Poor People's Campaign. And so as we look at as John Hope Bryant says, the transition from civil rights to silver rights, right? The money aspect of it. As we look at empowering and educating the youth on how they can liberate themselves around finances, but also be a beacon and an advocate for those that are addressing the social issues, addressing the homelessness, addressing the job opportunities, addressing the workforce development, all of the different pieces that, unfortunately, this systemic framework really has uncovered, right? The black and brown community has a lot of opportunities really to lean into the community, right? Because we've always been in a community. We just have to make sure that those resources are available to those members.
Okay. And then my last question is, what do you think that, especially since my team were here and everyone is here, what can we be doing that's more long-term impactful in the community? Because once again, we travel quite a bit. Sometimes you go from one team to the next.
Right.
And my biggest thing is how can we put a stamp on something and that's long-term? What do we need to be doing to in the community or in the educational system that's more impactful in the long term rather than, hey, you post something, oh, this and this, and that's what social media is about now. But how can you go behind the scenes and do something that's more impactful in the long term?
Love it. Yeah, and I think this is our first step, right? Like we're able to get proximate with each other, learn more about the Institute, be able to step away from the Institute from a visit and feel those emotions, right? And step away and think about, what did I just experience? And then, as we know, if you have a good sandwich or a good meal, you're going to tell somebody about it, right? And so
100%.
If this is a good experience, we want to make sure that you share with someone that, hey, you need to visit the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, but let me share with you what it did for me. And from there, we can then work together on providing educational material. You may say, look, I want to, the kids that I'm training for the summer, I want to be able to bring them to the Institute to be able to continue that same type of experience. Even if I get traded to a team in New York or I get picked up by Man U, whatever it may be, I hope, we can still be an advocate for you, even though you may not be within the city or within the state. But again, here at the Civil Rights Institute, we're here to do that either inside the walls or even outside the walls.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir, brother.
It was a pleasure.
You know it.